Hello. So, as you've probably all assumed, I am from England, and the county that I live in is Shropshire. And the history of Shropshire has always really interested me, as it's quite geologically variable. So, I've always had an interest in that. So, I've recently been doing some research on the history of Shropshire, and I've lived here, always been interested, and I've always thought, how was the Ironbridge Gorge formed? It's surrounded by lowlands, so you'd think, how did the River Severn have so much force to blast itself through this ridge of rock? So I've put together a presentation. It's very simple. This isn't the sort of usual content I do, but I've always wanted to, but I've never really come across something that is local to me and that doesn't seem to have really been covered elsewhere. And I find it fascinating because, like I say, I've always wondered how the gorge was formed. So I'm just going to go over a quick history of Shropshire, just to give you an idea. So if we rewind the clock back to the Precambrian period, when Shropshire lay near the edge of a long lost ocean, shallow, it was like a coastal shallow sea. Over hundreds of millions of years, the layers of sediment built up, were folded, faulted, and eventually thrust into the air, forming features such as the Longmynd, the Wrekin, which is very close to the Ironbridge Gorge, and the Soapstones. By the Carboniferous, lush swamps laid down coal, which is a point I will bring up later, and shallow seas brought the limestone, setting the stage for the Industrial Revolution. But we'll get to that. So enter the ice. So the last ice age, about 20,000 years ago, glaciers swept from the west and from the north, burying much of Shropshire under ice. Pressure of these moving glaciers sculpted the hills, dumped boulders, which are called erratics, and left behind layers of clay and till. So the bit of the history that I'm interested in is the Lake Lapworth. So as the ice sheets began to melt, they ended up, as the glaciers formed, they sealed off the River Severn's northern path to the Irish Sea. So basically, in the past, the River Severn would actually, around the Shrewsbury area, would have headed north and joined the River Tern and flowed out into the Irish Sea, I guess via the River Mersey. I don't think it had its own mouth. It probably used the same channel. So the Tern, I guess, has actually ended up reversing flow, because now that meets the River Severn near Atcham. So the flow must have reversed, but the River Tern is actually the original River Severn when it headed north. So basically, yeah. So the River Severn suddenly couldn't head north the way it used to. So the water essentially backed up against the ice shelf, and then it got stuck between the ice shelf that was receding. But anyway, it got stuck there, and then it got stuck against Wenlock Edge and the Shropshire Hills to the south. So it ended up creating this vast lake, which stretched from Newport in the west north to near Wem, Market Drayton, and then it backed up and up and up until finally it got deep enough, or high enough, to spill over the crest of the Wenlock Edge, or what is now the Ironbridge Gorge. So then that basically then scoured like a knife through butter straight through and created the Ironbridge Gorge, as that lake drained and the River Severn found a new course heading south. So the River Severn essentially was reborn, now flowing south through the gorge that it carved. This change wasn't temporary, it stuck, and today the Severn flows through Ironbridge, past Bridge North, and eventually into the Bristol Channel, but its original path is lost under the Cheshire Plains when it used to head north. So then, thousands of years later, humans arrived in the area, and we find treasure in the gorge, because it sliced so cleanly and so deeply straight through that very complex geological formation that was, as I said, folded and baked and brought back to the surface. It was rich in lots of iron ore, coal and limestone all in one place. So that's then created in 1779 the world's the birth basically of the Industrial Revolution, and the first iron bridge, which was built by Abraham Darby III, giving birth to the Industrial Revolution. So I might be a bit biased, but I'd say that as far as modern history goes, in prehistory, obviously there were more important rivers, I guess, than the River Severn. But for the modern world, the River Severn in England and Wales, sorry, is I think one of the most important rivers for modern history. And the gorge is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and I believe it should be a human heritage site. So there you go. So next time you walk through Ironbridge or look out from the Longmynd, remember that one day you would have been looking out at a vast lake stretching, like I say, from Bishop's Castle in the south, far as Wem in the north. Thanks for listening to my ramblings today, and catch you next time. And if you would like more content information about Shropshire and Shrewsbury, then please do like and subscribe. Thank you very much.